Good evening, friends. The subject of my talk this evening is what is Shraddha? Shraddha. Shraddha is a Sanskrit word. Sanskrit is much older than even Latin, so it is a Sanskrit word. And the scriptures of Hinduism often mention this word Shraddha. What is the English translation of this word? Well, unfortunately, it is very difficult to find a correct translation, of this word Shraddha. There is no counterpart in English of this word Shraddha. Sometimes it is translated as respect, sometimes as faith. But truly speaking, it is not ordinary respect as it is understood in the West. It is some worshipful attitude. Much deeper than respect. This is a very important word in the scriptures of Hinduism. And we call Hinduism Vedanta here. And there is a very popular holy book in Hinduism. It is called the Bhagavad Gita. The English translation of that is the Song of God. It is present in that great epic called the Mahabharata. It forms a part of that great epic. And it has 18 chapters. And in these chapters, spiritual teachings are given. Who is the teacher? The teacher is a divine incarnation called Sri Krishna. And these teachings are being given to a student of Sri Krishna, whose name is Arjuna. He is also called Partha. His mother's name was Pritha. From that he got that name, Partha. And this is a very popular book. It is believed that the Upanishads, which are considered very important scriptures of Hinduism, and those teachings are all present in the Bhagavad Gita. So there is a saying at the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, there is a part which is called meditation on the Gita or Gita Dhyanam. And there we read, Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandanaha Partho Vatsas Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gita Mritam Mahat. What does it mean? It means all the Upanishads, they are like cows. And the milker is Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna has milked those cows. And this milk is nutritious. So also all the best teachings of the Upanishads are there in the Bhagavad Gita. And Sri Krishna has presented that. That's why he is called the milker. Upanishads are like the cows, the milker is Sri Krishna, and Arjuna is the calf, and it is also a tradition. It was a tradition in the villages of India, that is to milk a cow, one would need the calf. The calf would be brought to the mouth of the calf would be brought to the udder of the mother cow, and then the mother cow will start giving milk. That's how it was. So, who is that calf? This is Arjuna. That means that's why the milk of the Upanishads are being given to Arjuna by Krishna, who is the milker. And who are the drinkers of that milk? Those who are pure-minded. Pure-minded men are the drinkers of that milk, and which is the supreme nectar of the Bhagavad Gita. Supreme nectar of the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavad Gita, practically all the teachings that are there in the Upanishads are there, given in a very interesting way. And Upanishad, in Hinduism, there is the word blasphemy is not there. So you can ask all questions about religion and the scriptures and the terms which are used in the scriptures. So it has been asked, because the word who can experience divinity, because the highest teaching of Hinduism or Vedanta is that everything is divine. We are all divine whether we know it or not. Everything in this world has divinity in it. Divinity is equally present in everything, but not equally manifested. Those who have minds, and there is some manifestation of divinity. But mindless objects like trees and chairs and tables and all, there is divinity equally present but not manifested at all. But those who have minds, such as human beings and also some animals, in them there is some manifestation. Every person is like an electric bulb, but they have different wattage. Some bulbs are 10-watt bulbs, some are 30-watt bulbs, some are 50-watt bulbs, some maybe 100-watt bulbs. And even very rarely you will find a bulb which is 1000-watt bulb. So the light which is given out, that is divinity. So every person has divinity in him or her, and that divinity is not manifested equally. Some in whom the divinity is manifested very little, they are like 10-watt bulbs. And then some other person in whom the divinity is more manifest, that person will be like 100-watt bulb. And in that way there could be 1000-watt bulb, and the 1000-watt bulb will be considered a saint. A lot of divinity is manifested through that person. And there are some multi-trillion watt light bulbs. They are the divine incarnations. You can see the picture of Sri Ramakrishna behind me. He is considered one of the two latest divine incarnations, real incarnations. There are many fake ones. And that he was an incarnation was determined by the signs and symptoms of a divine incarnation that are given in our reliable scriptures. Anyway, that's a different matter. So Ramakrishna is a multi-trillion watt light bulb. He is a divine incarnation. So also is Buddha, Jesus Christ, Krishna, Rama, etc. And so this divinity is present in all of us. And what is the purpose of human life? The purpose of human life is to manifest that divinity or experience that divinity. And divinity is sometimes called bliss in English, or it is supreme peace. So in the Bhagavad Gita, there is in chapter 4 and verse 39 we read, Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparasam yatendriya jnano labdha param shantim achirena adhigacchati. This is Sanskrit. Its meaning is, a person who has Shraddha, that person, he or she acquires the knowledge of Brahman. And that person also has to have all the sense organs under that person's control. And after attaining that knowledge, a person, or knowledge of divinity, a person goes to eternal peace. Param Shanti. So Shraddha Labhate Jnanam. Only those who have Shraddha, they can have it. So what is Shraddha? I already told you, Shraddha is respect which is like worshipful attitude. I will give you some examples which are there in our books. And some scriptures are there which try to give us some idea about what Shraddha is. And I told you that Bhagavad Gita is the essence of all the Upanishads. So let me refer to one Upanishad. For example, the Chandogya Upanishad, it is called. There is a story about a young man. His name was Satyakama. His mother's name was Jabala, but nobody knew what was his father's name. And Satyakama, as was the tradition in those days, wanted to go to a spiritual teacher. And when he was very young, and there was a spiritual teacher who was a knower of Brahman or God. Brahman means God, knower of Brahman. His name was Gautama. So Satyakama knew that when he would go to Gautama, Gautama would like to know about him, like about his paternal lineage and all these things. So he asked his mother, "Mother, what is my paternal lineage?" And then in Sanskrit it is called Gotra, because my teacher will ask me about that. Then the mother said, "You see, when I was young, I had intimate physical relationship with many men, not just one person. So I do not really know who is your father. So you tell your teacher that your name is Jabala, maternal lineage. You don't know your paternal lineage. And Satyakama went to his teacher, Gautama. And when Gautama asked him about his paternal lineage, Satyakama said that his mother had intimate physical relationship with many men when she was young, as a result of which Satyakama was born. So it is not his mother didn't know who Satyakama's father really was. And hearing that, Gautama was pleased. Gautama was pleased because Satyakama was very truthful. It is a matter of embarrassment for anyone to say something like that. But Satyakama overcame that embarrassment and spoke the truth. And so Gautama accepted him as his student or disciple. He said, "You are truthful, so your father must have been a Brahmin." The Brahmins were supposed to be endowed with those virtues. So that's how the story starts. As Satyakama's maternal lineage, by that is Jabala Satyakama. His mother was Jabala, so he is Jabala. And the teacher agreed to accept Satyakama as a student. And the teacher was a knower of Brahman. And what teaching he gave? He said to Satyakama, pointing to some 400 lean cows, and there was a breeding bull among them also. He said, "Take them to the grazing land, and when the number will become larger, then come back." And Satyakama then, in the presence of his guru Gautama, said, "When the number will become 1,000, then only I will come back." He obeyed his guru. He had Shraddha in the words of that. That is the first teaching that his guru gave to him. Go and take care of these cows. Because he had Shraddha. His faith or respect for his guru was a worshipful attitude, so to say. So he had Shraddha. So he took those cows happily. That was the first lesson given to him by his teacher. They went from one grazing land to another grazing land. It took quite a bit of time. Then a time came when the number of that cow herd, the number of the cattle, not cow herd, cattle, became 1,000. From 400 to 1,000. Then strange things started happening to Satyakama. The breeding bull started speaking to him in human language and said, "Our number has become 1,000 now." And then the breeding bull gave some teachings about divinity to Satyakama. Satyakama was pleased. And after a while, after some days, when Satyakama lit a fire, the fire started speaking to him in human language and gave Satyakama more teachings about Brahman or divinity. That was not the end of the story. And after a while, a goose alighted there in front of Satyakama and started giving him teachings in human language. And those teachings were about Brahman, about divinity. And Satyakama was lucky to have had all those teachings. Then, after a while, a waterfowl alighted before Satyakama and started speaking in human language and started giving him more teachings about Brahman. So, this is how the story goes. There are some literalists who think that everything that is in the scripture is true. Yes, true, but sometimes they are used to emphasize some point which the scriptures want to teach. For example, in the Ramayana we hear the story that Hanuman, who was a devotee of Lord Rama was a divine incarnation, flew through the air and went to a particular mountain, and conical mountain, and broke the tip of that mountain, put that tip of the mountain in his armpit, and he had gone to fetch some kind of herbal medicine, and then he flew through the air and came back to Rama. So those are literalists, they will think that this actually happened. No, we should take the implied meaning. The implied meaning. It shows how much Shraddha Hanuman had for his teacher Rama. What is impossible, that became possible for him. So also with Satyakama. Satyakama got all those teachings. I am sure that his own mind went on becoming purer and purer and purer, and then his mind started giving all those teachings. Well, from my own experience I can tell you that when I was a very young boy, I had many questions. One of them was, why am I born? And there are many other questions. I used to ask my mother all those questions, and my mother said to me once, you see, there was another boy like you in Europe. I read about him, and he would ask his mother so many questions. Then his mother said to him, my child, you read, then you will know. So my mother encouraged me to read. There was a children's library in our neighborhood, and then I started reading books, but I couldn't find the answers to most of my questions. Then I started growing up, and I looked for those answers. But later on I found out that I was carrying a book which I didn't have to buy by paying a single penny. That was the book of my own mind. And from my own mind I started getting answers to my questions. Eventually I got the answer to my question from my mind, why I am born. The answer that I got was, I am born in order to be perfect. that I manifest my divinity. So also I am sure that is Satyakama's own mind started giving us the teaching as the mind started developing, because he had great Shraddha for the words of his Guru. That's why. And by the time the number of that herd became 1,000, he returned to his teacher. And seeing him, the teacher said, "Your face is beaming like the face of a person who has come to know divinity, Brahman. Who taught you those things?" Then Satyakama said to his teacher that a bull and some fire and a goose and a waterfowl, they gave those teachings. And then Satyakama said, "I want to have teachings from your mouth, sir, revered sir." Then the same teachings which Satyakama had got were given by his teacher, Gautama. That's how the story goes. Yes. When we are children, we read some Upanishadic teaching. That is, the students had to go to the teacher's home and study there for about 12 years. And after completion of the study, the students had to go back to their parents. And at that time, before the departure of the students, the teacher would give some advice. And one advice was, "Matrideva bhava," look upon your mother as God. Then Pitrideva bhava, look upon your father as God. Acharya deva bhava, look upon your teachers as God. And Atiti deva bhava, look upon your guest as God. So then, having heard that, at least I had faith in those words. So I used to treat my mother and father like God. And every time when as a boy I had to go to school, I used to salute them. And when my father would not be at home, he had gone to work elsewhere, then I would salute his shoes. And not only that, I obeyed them completely. So this Shraddha gives obedience also. And then that's how I started obeying my teachers in schools and colleges and universities. Yes, I've always done that. And who was my role model? Role model was Ramakrishna. Yes. And he had humility. I never thought that I was great. And the society in which I was growing up, there, in that society, bragging about oneself was considered very bad manners. Nobody would brag about one's educational achievements and all those things. Anyway, I don't know about India now, but it may have changed by now. So, I had Shraddha for my parents. And whatever I studied in life, I studied following the instruction of my father. I had to study science, and then I had to study aeronautical engineering for a while. And all these things I did because my father wanted me to do those things. Yes, then my father passed away. So I didn't have to obey my father anymore. That's why around that time, after a few years, I felt like becoming a monk of the Ramakrishna Order, and I became a monk by God's grace. Okay. And in the life of Swami Vivekananda, you find an example of Shraddha. Swami Vivekananda was at that time traveling in India as a monk. His guru Sri Ramakrishna had passed away. Then when he was walking on the coast of South India, there is the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal and all those seas, the Bay of Bengal. Then he had a vision. In that vision he saw Sri Ramakrishna, even though he was not alive anymore, he was present there on the waves and waving to Vivekananda to go to the west. And at that time, the world's first parliament of religions was going to be held in Chicago. That was the year 1893. And when Vivekananda told about his dream to some very rich person who had become an admirer of Vivekananda, he said, yes, I will pay for you your fare. So you go there and attend that parliament. That parliament invited some delegates from different religions. But Vivekananda was never chosen as a delegate. Nevertheless, the Holy Mother Is Shraddha Devi, she also permitted Narendra. At that time he was Vivekananda anyway. He had become a sannyasi. His original name was Narendra. So permitted him to go abroad. So he came abroad by ship, he came to Canada, and from there by train he went to Chicago. And then he was accepted miraculously as a delegate, and he turned out to be the most important orator in that parliament of religions. That is Vivekananda. And Sri Ramakrishna would appear before him and would give him further instructions. This is how the Shraddha that Vivekananda had for his guru worked. He adored and worshipped Ramakrishna. And this Shraddha is highly encouraged in India. I am in a center here in Seattle talking, and this center was started by Swami Vivedishananda, who was a disciple of one of the great disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, and that disciple was Swami Brahmananda. So when he first joined the monastic order, he joined the order in Belur Math, the Belur monastery near Calcutta. And there he was with his teacher for a while. And he had a master's degree in philosophy, this Vivedishananda Swami. But he was very polite and he would never brag about anything. And his nature was very mild nature, I think. So that's why his teacher Swami Brahmananda said in British English, you don't seem to have any dash and push. That means in American English it will be, you don't have any get up and go. So he remembered that. And then when he was asked to come to America, he came to, first he was in Portland, I think, and then he went to San Francisco. He had to work there. And San Francisco Center, Vedanta Center, is one of the first two centers started by Swami Vivekananda in this country. And that had money and pretty good following at that time. But then, out of Shraddha for his guru, Swami Brahmananda, he felt that he should go and do something which would please his guru on his own. shaking off his humble nature. That's why he thought that if he could go and start a center, a Vedanta center, then his guru would be pleased. Out of Shraddha for his guru, that thought came to his mind. And then he left San Francisco and requested the headquarters to send someone else. And then another Swami Bhaskarananda came there. And then Swami went to the East Coast. And then he went to Denver, Colorado, one after another. But the centers were not growing. Then eventually he came down to Seattle. And he was here and tried his best to serve his guru. He told me that when he first came, he had to give lecture in a hall, rented hall. At that time, I said, how many people would come? Because at that time about 70 or 80 people came. I said, that is a good number. And he said, no. After all, the number came down to 8 or 6 or something like that. And he was able to buy this house by borrowing money from a lady of San Francisco Center. But he had a cousin who was in Providence Center and Swami in charge. He used to send him money to run this place. And then he was able to somehow get some money and paid the price of that building to that lady. How much it cost? As far as I remember, $8,000 or something only. Now it is a multi-million-dollar home. That was Swami Vivedishananda. Out of Shraddha for his guru, he tried all these things. And he was instrumental in building this place. He never asked anybody to give him financial help. Whatever Sri Ramakrishna would do, he would depend on Sri Ramakrishna out of Shraddha.